Hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John and I'm here today again with David for the Let's Talk podcast, and today we're going to be talking about Rocky. The first Rocky film, that is, that came out. What year was it, David? 74?
1976.
76. Wow, I was way off. I don't know why I thought 73. And it won the Best Picture that year.
Yeah, it did. Do you think it deserved to win that year?
I absolutely think it deserved to win that year. Honestly, the story of Rocky itself getting made is just as an incredible story as the actual film, because, Sylvester Stallone put his whole life on the line for this movie, even to bet on himself to be the star of it, because all before that, I think all he really did was some small roles, and I think he did some porn.
Yeah, the Italian Stallion.
Yeah.
I'm near certain that was his porn name.
I mean, honestly,
Not that I've seen them.
I haven't seen them either. And from what I understand, he wasn't like really into it. He was like kind of like just an actor in them or something like that.
Yeah. Well, that's I don't know too much about it. I know that I did read that he had done some porn, and that basically his name was the Italian Stallion. So when he tells you in the movie, that's where he got the name. While cooking one night, and you see Paulie kind of looking at him as if, what? In real life, even though this movie kind of reflects Sylvester Stallone's real life, that's not totally true. But I was actually saying there, we're recording this the end of November, that the movie was actually released around this time of year in 1976. Oxford winning the Best Picture of 1974, 1976, 1977. This movie is incredible to me. I just think this is one of the best written movies that I've ever seen. Just the dialogue, the back and forward, the characters. I absolutely love it. I mean, this movie's in the top 10 of movies of all time for me.
Oh yeah, no, this is a great one. Honestly, I've never had that personal connection like you do. I wouldn't put this like in my top like 30 or 40 movies of all time, but I do absolutely love this movie. It's honestly my mom. This is one of her favorite movies of all time, and my brother Ryan, he actually named his dog Buckus after the dog in Rocky. Like, that's his dog's name. They have more of a connection to this movie, but because of that, I grew up watching this movie all the time. Like you said, we're recording at the end of November, and this movie came out in November of 1976, and it's a Thanksgiving movie in a lot of ways. And
You want the bird? Go in the alley and eat the bird.
And we were saying, like, you guys over in Ireland don't celebrate Thanksgiving. That's an American holiday. For us here, like, they always play the marathon around Thanksgiving. But for me, I never actually would watch the Rocky movies. I would watch the James Bond movies. They always get a marathon, too, around this time. So I always had a less of a connection, but I still love this movie. It's still one of the best, if not the best, sports movies of all time. It has a great story, and like you said, it really just illustrates how Sylvester Stallone's life went in comparison to how, he put it all on the line. Like, he was just a regular guy who really had no aspirations of he had aspirations, but it didn't look like it was in the cards for him. He just he got really lucky, gambled on himself, and it paid off.
Like you were saying there about Canada around Thanksgiving in America, I think there's an awful lot of Americana about this movie, and I've heard people describe it as the American dream, that you can come from nothing, right, or realize your dreams, and basically, yes, you're right, that the movie mirrors Sylvester Stallone's real life, where he was a down and out, down in his luck actor, stroke writer, and he came up with this idea of this guy who is going nowhere in his life, is down in his luck, everybody thinks he's a bum, and then he gets this opportunity out of nowhere to fight the heavyweight champion of the world. He takes it and he exceeds everybody's expectations. And even though he doesn't beat Apollo, he still wins at the end. The movie isn't about boxing. It's about overcoming adversity. You know what I mean? It's about overcoming the odds. It's about getting respect for yourself and from other people. And it's also a love story between him and Adrian. And that's one thing I really love about this film as well. I mean, I suppose it's very simple in its construct. Within the first 20, 25 minutes, you're just being introduced to characters, one after the other, one-on-one. They're not all in the same room at the same time. You're following Rocky, but you're getting introduced to, here's this fighter. You know what I mean? He's not very good. He's taking a beating in the ring, but you see the rage come out of him when he gets headbutted by Spider Rico. Once he wins the fight and gets out of the ring, everybody's calling him a bum. You're a bum. And he's asking for cigarettes.
You got a smoke?
Yeah, you can have this one.
When they fight again, and how much did they get paid? He's getting paid peanuts to take this beating in the ring. And then from that, we move on to, for example, I think we meet after, who we meet at? Adrian. So we meet Adrian, and then we move on to meeting Polly, and then Mickey, and then Apollo, and that's it. And then all these kind of characters all come together again as the movie goes on.
I agree. I love the structure of how we're being introduced to all the characters one by one. Last time I did my rewatch of this, I really realized that my favorite character, besides Rocky, obviously it's his series, but besides Rocky, is Apollo Creed.
I was shaped nothing, man. They're afraid. Hell, they know everybody in the world's gonna see this fight, and none of them got a prayer whipping me.
I love how Carl Weathers plays the character, especially in this first movie. You know, like, yes, he's cocky and arrogant, but you can see he still cares. He's obviously more in it for the paycheck. He's like, okay, you know, the guy bowed out of the fight. We need to bring somebody else in. Let's bring in like a local guy. He just likes the nickname, and that's why it's easy to promote. So he's not taking him seriously as far as a fighter. And, you know, he just picks him. He's going to get paid Rocky, which is good. It's a good break for him. But nobody ever sees him as being able to even compete with Carl Weathers' Apollo Creed. Like, Carl Weathers' Apollo Creed, he's only concentrating on the promotion. You could see when they both enter the ring how Apollo Creed's got the big grand entrance while Rocky's just the guy. And all he really wanted to do, even though, like you said, he doesn't win in the end, he does win in the end because he was the first guy to take him to the distance. He was the first guy to put him down. And he gets the girl. That's really what it matters to him, is he gets to be with Adrian. He found somebody to be his companion. They were both lonely people walking through this world who found each other, and they just had this big moment in the ring, essentially, at the very end, which I love.
Exactly, and Apollo Creed, to me, is just playing Muhammad Ali.
Yes.
That's basically what he's doing, but I'm taking absolutely nothing away from Carl Weathers because he brought that character to life, you know, but he is kind of like playing a version of Muhammad Ali, and you see that in the ring at the end where real-life fighter Joe Frazier gets into the ring, in which Joe Frazier actually, you know, fought Muhammad Ali 3 times, and they had this bitter rivalry. But you see Creed taunting him, saying, "You're next, Joe, you're next, Joe." But yeah, Apollo Creed is, you know, I think in the movie he's 40-0. I think he's had 40 knockouts.
Yeah.
So nobody's coming close to him. You could say that he's became a wee bit kind of complacent, too comfortable. And yes, he picks Rocky after the other fighters, or one of the fighters gets injured, and then the other guy can't fight him for various reasons. So he picks this guy out, as you say, maybe because of his name and because of the reasoning behind the fight, the bicentennial of America, and it's on January 1st. And he sees this Italian stallion as a promotional piece for him, you know, and it's all about Creed, it's all about promotion, it's all about his image, you know. But I don't think, I mean, you can tell he's not taking Rocky seriously at all. There's a scene where Tony, who's his trainer, Tony's brilliant.
I love
where
him.
He's watching Rocky on the TV when he's pounding the beef.
Yeah.
And he says, "You got to come and see this guy. You know, he looks business, or he looks like he means business." And you hear Apollo in the background. He's talking about, you know, jargon about promotion. And, you know, he's the fighter. He's talking like a promoter. You know, and you hear him saying, "Oh, yeah, I'm serious too, Tony." And then you hear him saying to his secretary, "Could you bring me more coffee?" You know, instead of training, he's sitting there drinking coffee and doing promotion when he should be training for the fight.
Yeah, I love that you brought up Tony because he's another great character that they end up using throughout the series. I love him and Apollo's relationship because he's like, yeah, I'm here to concentrate on the fight. That's what you should be concentrating on too, because regardless of all the promotion that you could do, you're sitting here drinking coffee, putting weight on. This guy's in the streets training right now to fight you, and that's all that's on his mind. Just take him a little seriously, because watching him fight, you know, maybe he's not the greatest of fighters, but Rocky can take a beating. He can take a beating. He's like everybody, like that's like you said with Americana, like taking a beating but getting back up and just continuing on in the fight. And that was his thing. He's like, I just want to go the distance with this guy. And Apollo, eventually when they do get in the ring, Apollo realizes pretty fast that, okay, maybe I did undersell this guy. And then he refocuses up, because Apollo, at the end of the day, he's still a much more skilled fighter than Rocky.
Yes.
But he just doesn't have the heart of Rocky. This is hanging in front of him. He's going to take it. You know, Apollo already got his chance. He's already, like you said, I think 40-0. Regardless, he's still Apollo Creed after the fight. But he wants to make sure everyone remembers the name Rocky after this fight.
Yeah, well, Rocky wanted it more. Rocky was more raw, and I think that's what Tony's seen. Tony, as his trainer, seen this beforehand. We can see the evolution of Apollo. Not the evolution, I suppose. He was always arrogant, but he becomes, and he does a great job. Carl Weathers of crafting this 3-dimensional character in the first movie. But as the movies go on, you see more about Apollo and his life, his background, and his trainer as well. But we'll go into those another time, because I love this series, and I wouldn't really want to go into like the sequels and leave anything out of this one. You know what I mean, John? So
Yeah.
But the thing you're saying there about Tony is Tony tells him after the first round when he puts Apollo down, Rocky puts him down, which I think is a long count, by the way.
It is.
I think he was down for longer than 10 seconds. I think Rocky won that fight. But
we wouldn't get a movie.
What's that?
We wouldn't get a movie if he was down after 10 count in the first round.
Well, Rocky would have won, then that's it. But still get the sequel, still get the rematch. But this time Rocky starts off the champion, and maybe Rocky doesn't train as hard in the sequel, and then Apollo comes in and batters him. But,
that would be a good series.
Yeah.
Build up to Rocky versus Apollo 2, and then the third one we get the rubber match. It could have worked. Could have gone a different route.
Yeah, could have a trilogy.
Yeah.
You know, and Clubber 9 still sitting there going, I want my shot. But no, but you see Tony Sanford, maybe this guy doesn't want to show. He thinks it's a down fight.
Finish this bomb and let's go home.
Apollo comes out in that second round and gives him a tremendous beating, but he just couldn't get him out of there, and Rocky just kept coming at him, and started to give Apollo as good as he got as the fight went on, and it was a long, grueling battle. And then, as you say, Rocky earned his respect and got the guard. But one thing I must say was, when I was actually doing a wee bit of research on this, was that, you know, as I said earlier there, so Stallone was a struggling writer, actor and writer. He'd done a bit of writing as well, and I think his original drafts were actually about an actor. And it wasn't until he went to a boxing fight, it was Muhammad Ali versus Chuck Wepner, whereas Chuck Wepner was this kind of like club fighter who nobody was given a chance against Muhammad Ali, and he actually floored Muhammad Ali. But if you watch the fight, it's a trip. He actually trips him up, but Muhammad Ali just took it in a straight. And Muhammad Ali got up, and Chuck Wepner didn't go the distance. Ali actually stopped him. But Stallone was at the fight, and that's what gave him the idea of, this is more relatable. You know, what if my character was a fighter? And the original drafts were actually very dark. Rocky was a much more darker character, you know, and I think one of the original drafts, he throws the fight at the end.
Yep, because it doesn't matter to him or something like that, so he ends up just throwing it in the end. And,
yeah, probably because he thinks he can't win anyway.
Yeah.
But there was also another ending that was shot in the original movie where it kind of ends with him and Adrian in the ring, and it just freeze frames them two hugging. What actually happens is him and Adrian leave, or he leaves the ring and meets Adrian in the corridor, and they just take hands and they walk down the corridor and they walk through all the rubbish from the actual arena in the stadium. And it was supposed to kind of symbolize that Rocky just done an amazing thing, but now that it's over, he'll soon fall back to being a nobody and he'll be forgot about. But they felt as if that wasn't the right ending, and they refilmed the end of the movie of what you see now. And that actual shot of that scene, it was in one of the posters. You can actually see the poster of Rocky and Adrian, their silhouettes walking away, holding hands, and instead of him on the steps, with the arms up.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I didn't actually realize that. One thing, though, that I did look up, you were talking about Charles Webner, is he actually sued Sylvester Stallone and the movie studio, and I believe he won. They, settled out of court. He actually ended up getting a settlement for that, even though Sylvester Stallone said that never influenced him. But from what you were saying, it's pretty obvious, that kind of at least played a part there, where you should have gave him a little bit of money to give him some credit for the role.
Yeah, you know what? I think Stallone, there was no secret from Stallone that he'd seen that fight. He says that influenced him. I don't know, it's like everything, isn't it? It's that old saying, success has many fathers, failures an orphan. And I just think that Stallone, to be honest with you, took a lot of inspiration for his characterizations from a lot of different real life events and people. I mean, if you're a boxing fan and you go back and you take a look at the fighters that were around in the 50s and 60s and 70s, early 70s, you can see influences like, for example, Joe Frazier, who's in the movie. He was from Philadelphia. He claims that he run them steps. So Stallone took that as inspiration. You know what I mean? If you watch the fight of the century, Ali versus Frazier, the first one, I mean, it just looks like you have this boxer up against a brawler who doesn't give you a minute to settle, doesn't give you a minute, is up close and personal, gets on the inside and pounds your ribs. That's Joe Frazier versus Ali, the first fight, well, all three fights. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? So And I don't think Stallone's ever made a secret that he took inspiration. I mean, he has a poster of Rocky Marciano on his wall, and Mickey says to him, "You remind me of the old Rock." I mean, his name's Rocky, but I think his name is actually Robert.
Yeah.
Rocky's name is actually Robert Balboa, and he takes the name Rocky from Rocky Marciano. So the only thing is about this series is that I don't like how real life fighters come in to the Rocky universe, because it makes me question, well, where are they when Rocky's champion? Where is your Larry Holmes? Where is your Joe Frazier? Where is your Muhammad Ali?
Yeah.
They're supposed to be kind of like inspired by them.
Yeah, I actually always bothered me too, because then you're starting to get into the fact that, okay, that they're in the same world, but it's the same. Is it the same heavyweight title, or is it like now is it a prop? We're very confused. I don't like it when they do that stuff either. Usually in most films they try and keep that stuff separate just so people don't ask those questions, but they felt like they could do it. I don't know why. I guess maybe that's a deal with like, hey, I want to be in the movie. All right, we'll work you in somehow, and this is the best they could do. And most people probably wouldn't even question it, right?
Yeah, I think it's kind of one of those things where it's such a low budget movie, and they probably didn't have any high hopes for it. Do you know what I mean? That, oh, we can get Joe Frazier, he's world famous, put him in the movie. You know, it's you know, I think that's what it is. And then what happened was, as the movies went on, like I think the second movie, Roberto Duran's in it for a few minutes. Do you know what I mean? And then by the later movies, they were actually hiring real life boxers to star in the movie with Stallone. But I'll be honest with you, as much as I'll be honest, I actually liked Tommy Morrison in Rocky 5. That's a different story.
Ring in the ring. Tommy Gunn only fights in the ring.
But I think that the actors, the likes of Mr. T and
Hulk
Carl
Hogan
Weathers, better jobs, Hulk Hogan, because they were actually actors. You know, even though they weren't professional fighters, they were good act. Well, Mr. T, debatable, he's a good actor, but he was a good character.
He did. This is honestly my favorite in this series, Rocky 3. That's the best time Mr. T was ever an actor, even more than the A-Team. I think he does.
Yeah.
You know, he's a very believable character, at least. You know, I always felt like Mr. T always just became a caricature of himself by the end of it.
Yeah.
Like, and then in that movie, it actually feels like he's playing a character with an understandable background. They actually wrote him a decent character. He doesn't feel like a character. It's weird. It works.
To go into it too much, but I do know that Mr. T's background was influenced by Sonny Liston. I think it was Sonny Liston, because his background was that he was in prison, and that's where he was all this time, and he was training in prison, and he was a boxer in prison, and he'd get out, and that's how he moves up the ranks so quick. People say, well, where was Mr. T when Rocky and Apollo Creed were fighting? Well, he was in prison. And I know that Sonny Liston, that's how he learned where to fight, and when he came out, he was the scariest fighter of all time. He was knocking everybody out, like Mike Tyson was doing. The characters are what makes this movie, to be honest.
But yeah, you know, that's one thing actually I wanted to talk to you about, because for us, like, we always do the comparison, and a lot of people who enjoy these types of movies or enjoy these types of actors always compare Sylvester Stallone to Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I always prefer an Arnold movie over any Sylvester Stallone movie. But what separates Sylvester Stallone from Arnold Schwarzenegger is that Sylvester Stallone can write and he can direct. You know, he's got a lot more, like, he's a lot more involved in the production of these movies, writing the characters. Like, he's a very smart man, Sylvester Stallone.
Yes.
And
he is. I agree with you. You know what? I don't have a kind of like, you have to like one or the other. I see this to be an old time. Were you a Stallone man or you Schwarzenegger guy? Look, I like both of them. I grew up in an era watching their movies, both of them. But I do agree. I think that Schwarzenegger's smart in his own way. You know what I mean?
Businessman.
But Stallone's very smart in that way too. Do you know what I mean? But the difference is, I don't think Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, you can still be smart but not be able to sit down and write a movie, right? Whereas I think Stallone is smart in the sense that he can sit down and develop a character with a background and a well-rounded, three-dimensional character with, you know, motivations or whatever, and baggage and whatever flawed characters. Like this movie here, that's what I wanted to say about the characters. Like every single character is flawed. You know, they all have conflicts with each other and with life, and I think everybody can relate to that. Every person on this earth can relate to that, because that's what life is most of the time. You know, it's conflict with something or someone, you know. But I don't think Schwarzenegger could sit down and write a movie. I also think that when it comes down to it, I think Stallone is a better actor than Arnold Schwarzenegger. I know that this series became a bit cartoonish. It became a bit of a caricature of itself as time went on. We all know that, like, if you look at films like First Blood with Stallone, which is one of my favorite films of all time as well.
Love that
movie. And then
movie.
what that evolved into, you know, Rambo 2, Rambo 3, they all became very cartoonish and caricatures of themselves. But if you were to turn around and say to me, like, to me, like, Schwarzenegger's best movies is Terminator 1 and Terminator 2. I know Terminator 1 and 2 is your favourite movies of all time.
Yeah.
But from an acting standpoint, I mean, you got to say that Rocky and maybe First Blood, you could argue are better. What do you think?
Oh, 100%. Sylvester Stallone's acting in... First of all, First Blood's my favorite of Sylvester Stallone's movies, and I also think he gives a world-class acting performance in that movie. I always thought Sylvester Stallone, when it comes to, like, Rocky, eventually, like you said, it becomes a character of itself. But the way he plays in Rocky 1 and Rocky 2, I think, he plays it great as far as for his acting. Like, he gets a little bit out of the line with everybody else once we get to the 1980s. But with the 70s stuff, I think he was really in tune with his acting, his writing. And then eventually, I think he starts to try and compete with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And they both kind of just go back and forth with these over-the-top action roles, which I do love. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I love them both. Like, I kind of grew up with Arnold movies.
Where's your Christmas spirit?
Arnold himself is a brand where I feel like Stallone can actually play characters. And he really did try to do that a lot more often in Copland. Eventually you could see him returning to that acting form and kind of push away, where I don't think Schwarzenegger ever really had a role like that where you can go, maybe outside of the lines he could get nominated for an Academy Award. I don't think Schwarzenegger ever had that, in my opinion. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think that what I was going to say there too as well, actually, I meant to say was just that they've both made, as you say, over-the-top, cheesy action movies. They've both done that, but I don't think that Schwarzenegger has ever made a movie. I'm talking acting-wise, because we know that Terminator and Terminator 2 are absolutely outstanding. I'm not a fan of True Lies. I'm trying to think of any other Schwarzenegger movies.
Kindergarten Cop.
An action movie.
Kindergarten Cop and Twins, you could argue he brought, like, his heart to it, but it's still Schwarzenegger in a fish out of water scenario, which is, like, the other thing that you can do with him.
It's comedy, and
yeah,
and that's what I'm saying. Although when you look at, like, Rocky 1, Rocky 2, and First Blood, like, they're top class acting performances from Stallone in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
When you got Arnold Schwarzenegger playing a robot in Terminator 1 and Terminator 2, do you know what I mean? And as much as he's really good at it, it's not like an Oscar performance.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
No, he has like 12 lines.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's supposed to be emotionless. He's not supposed to show emotion, so his emotions are just, look angry. Okay, I can do that. I'm big and jacked. It works, and I love it. It's my favorite movie, but I'm not gonna be like, hey, give that guy the Oscar for '84. No.
Yeah, and I love, like, Total Recall as well. I mean, Predator, Total Recall, Kindergarten Cop, as you say, Twins, brilliant movies. I love them all. But I think from, a serious movie point of view, I think Rocky and First Blood are head and shoulders above it. And I would actually argue as well that Rocky 3, that Stallone gives a top-class performance as well. I do think there's a lot of more cheesier elements to Rocky 3 than, obviously, the previous two.
Yeah.
But I still think his acting performance in 3 is top-class. The reason being is that the character of Rocky changed when he became famous. And he's really good at playing that.
Yeah, I loved, that's one aspect of Rocky 3 that I did love that they dived into, is how it changed the person of Rocky. You could see that's what his inspiration was, Stallone, with that one was, now Rocky's got money and he's kind of drifting away from that person that we knew, that person who was in the streets with the people, like what they're showing in the first Rocky, him running in the streets. Now he's got the big house, he's got the luxury cars. He's not the same exact person, so he's playing the character a little bit different. The only thing that with Rocky 3, I hate Hulk Hogan, so I really hate seeing him in that movie, even though he does pretty good for what he is. I just think it's a little bit of a step down, and I've told you guys before, and I've told you, I love Rocky 4, unapologetically, but it is just one big 80s montage.
Yeah, it's just one montage. Look, I really would cover these, but for me, like, Rocky 4 is one of the lowest on the original franchise for me. I love all of them, but the reason being is that it's got less story and less character development and less drama, and it's action packed. It's pretty quick paced. It's the MTV Rocky. And that's the reason why. I just think the other five, including Rocky 5,
I like Rocky 5 too.
has a lot more drama in it, and I like that. The Rocky movies, that's what I want to see.
No, I agree with that 100%. I mean, it's like, it's more personal taste. Like, can you compete with Rocky 4 and comparing it to Rocky? Like, it really just comes down to taste. And if you're in the mood for like a cocaine 80s movie, or if you want to watch a real Best Picture winner, like Rocky is a Best Picture winner for a reason, because it tells a compelling, heartfelt story, a great sports movie, an underdog story that everyone loves, and there is no competition. You know, one is a product of the 1980s. You've seen it once and you'll see it a million more times, while the other one is a story that you might have seen a million times now, but where did it really become famous was with Rocky.
You know what, when I was watching it again as well, John, I thought this a load of times about Rocky, the original movie. It's like a lot of those movies that came out in the 70s, to be honest, like, they didn't really need sequels.
No.
As much as I love Rocky 2, and as much as people wanted to see this story continue, to me, Rocky's another one of them movies. If they ended it there, it would still be as famous as it is today. It didn't need those sequels. It would have been as famous as Alien, Jaws, do you know what I mean? Any of The Exorcist, you know, any of those movies that if it didn't have a sequel, you know, it still would have been considered, you know, one of the best movies of that decade.
100%. And I mean, it just capturing Philadelphia perfectly. And one thing, just to circle back to Stallone's writing, that when I was reading about, is pretty cool that he sneaks in the script because they made mistakes when they were making the movie, because it only took 28 days to make. Was he makes the comment about the red trunks. Well, he was supposed to wear red trunks, and they messed up and sent him the white ones, so he had put it in the movie so it doesn't look like they made a mistake that they actually made. And it's the same thing with the robe, how he talks about how baggy it is. They couldn't get it remade. They only sent that robe that was that day. They had to use it, so he's like, okay, I'll just bring up that it's baggy. And it works in the movie. You never would think twice about it.
Yeah, listen, throughout the whole movie, I was doing this. I've loved this movie, going back to what you were saying earlier about growing up with it, your mother, and did you say your brother as well? Yeah, yep. So I'm the same. Like I've told you before, I have brothers and older brothers, and I have an older brother who's likes the Rocky movies, and you know, so he was the one that had them on VHS, and I remember actually growing up in the Rocky movies, and like we said earlier, like I always loved watching Rocky 3 and 4 because they were the more fast-paced, action-packed Rocky films. But the older I got, you know, I go back more to the original and the second one, because to me, obviously, they are better movies, more drama-based, drama-driven, great dialogue and things like that, and it is the original. Now, Rocky 2 for me is my favourite, but it's kind of like when we've done Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we talk about Temple of Doom. Like the first one is without a doubt the best one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the second one is my favourite one. You know, because Rocky wins, and it's probably a wee bit more glossier. The first one, not much more, but a wee bit more glossier and stuff, and Rocky wins in it.
And actually, another thing that they had to do, as far as like, because they had such a small budget, and you know, 28 days to shoot, when they do the ice skating rink scene, when he goes on his first date with Adrian, the reason why nobody's there and they sneak in that little thing how he paid the guy off to let him in is because they didn't have the money to hire extras. They wanted to do it in a public setting, they just couldn't afford it. I think that's like, in my head, other than the fight scene, I always think of that scene. I always thought that was one of the most romantic scenes in film. I really love their connection because she's so hesitant to get with him from the beginning. You know, you can argue that he's a little bit too persistent with her. You know, I still think that this scene is amazing. What do you think of it?
Over the years, like I've obviously watched documentaries about Rocky and stuff and things like that. I've been watching Rocky through my whole life, you know what I mean? Maybe once a year or once every other year. And you're right, it's astounding how much kind of like, how low budget this movie was, that they were working on a shoestring, and that they were basically like, only had so many days to complete this movie. And it seemed to be that they were coming up against these kind of problems all the time, and so they were having to rewrite scenes and change dialogue and things like that, and be interested in movies and things like that. I remember hearing filmmakers say that filmmaking is solving problems. Is that if you will never ever go through a day when you're making a movie where you won't come up against a problem, and you gotta wake up in the morning thinking, how am I going to solve today's problems? And obviously, you know, this just being a drama, you know, there's no special effects or anything like that really. You know, it's just about rewriting certain scenes and dialogue and things like that. And as you say, the ice skating scene is actually one of those scenes. And I believe that actually that scene originally took place in a cafe, and they sat there just talking back and forward. And it was the director John G. Avildsen that says, no, we got to make it even more interesting. Why don't they go bowling? Or why don't they go to an ice skating rink? And we'll just keep them moving, so they can have this back and forward. And yeah, when they actually go there and they couldn't afford the extras, I actually love that scene because it becomes very comical then. I love when he goes in and he says to the guy that's cleaning up,
Yeah.
he says to him, look at this girl, she's not very well. The doctor says that she's got ice skating's the best thing for her. She look well to you. It's just can't stop there. And then he says, I think he says like 10 minutes, $10 or whatever. And he pays him, but you hear him in the background counting down, like,
I'm gonna show you something.
7 minutes.
Yeah, originally.
8 minutes, 7 minutes. But once you just see like Rocky kind of looking as if seriously, like, he shouted it out every single minute counting down.
Yeah, and actually, it's a well-written scene. You're right. The comical moments in it are great. I do love that. It's just perfect. And Talia Shire plays her character great as well. I always liked how she plays Adrian, and it's such a different role compared to her role in The Godfather.
Yeah.
I really find that, and I prefer her in these movies. Like what she becomes in The Godfather 2 is just, a terrible person in the end, but you understand why. We'll talk about The Godfather another day. But,
Yeah.
how she plays Adrian as this, like, innocent girl, scared, nervous all the time, clearly an animal lover, has a horrible brother. But, she plays that just so perfectly. I love how Talia Shire plays her character.
But she's like one of the animals trapped in the pet shop.
Yeah.
She's trapped in her own cage.
Yeah.
And it's up to Rocky to get her out of that cage.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? With her brother Paulie,
Yeah.
no better time to bring Paulie up, and I love how Rocky always goes in to tries to tell her a joke. You know what I mean?
Just like bring her out of her shell all the time. That's always what he's trying to do because Rocky's still a people person. People kind of see through him like he's still, he's kind of working for loan sharks in this movie just to get money. And that's why Mickey kind of looks down on him and like looks at him as a wasted talent because it's like you're working for them. You could do so much more than that. You just got to believe in yourself a little bit. But he's just like Talia Shire's character where, his confidence is in different areas. He's good at talking to people, but, he doesn't have the confidence to take that next step. And same thing. She's trapped in this in this pet shop with all these animals, like you said, she's trapped in her own cage. She's got a brother who's just overwhelming all the time, and she probably beats her down in a sense, not, physically, but mentally, a little bit physically. But, so she just feels she has no confidence as well, and the two of them need each other to go to that next step in life.
Yeah, and as you said about Rocky, we actually see as well at the very start that even though he's this shady, we shouldn't think that he's this shady character because he's back clacking for a local loan shark, and he's got to break the guy's thumb.
Yeah,
and he can't bring himself to do it. But you would like to think, if Rocky's had fear, he has done these things then in the past. But you can see that he has a bit of a heart because in this particular day he takes pity on this guy and doesn't do it, which could have got Rocky in deep trouble. I just think that's all funny and all when he says, take the coat, you'll get $40 or $50 for the coat. And Rocky says, keep the coat. Keep the coat. You should have thought ahead. And he's like, I'll tape the hand up like you broke the thumb. He doesn't have to know. I'll tape the hand up. And he's like, should have thought ahead. And then obviously Gazzo, another character who I love as well is Gazzo. Every single one of these characters, every one of them are so well-rounded. I really like Gazzo in the movie. And you can tell that Gazzo really likes Rocky as well.
Yeah.
He tells him off about the thumb. And Rocky says to him, I'm sorry about the thumb, it won't happen again. And but later on, when Rocky gets shot, he actually gives him $500 for to help him train. 1976 or 75, that's a hell of a lot of money.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, that's a life-changing amount for him, and it's just he needs it, and that's a good way, again, good writing to explain how he's able to train for this fight because they're not, they're going to pay him for the fight, but to lead up to it, he needs money to train to do it. To get his career off the ground.
He wouldn't get the money until after the fight.
Yeah.
So you need money. I watch a bit of boxing and I know that, especially fighters coming up, it's the promoters and it's the I think the managers that put the money into the young fighters to get them promotion, to get them put them on these fights and all the rest of it. A lot of fighters don't make an awful lot of money. And it's only the fighters that are at the top of the tree that actually start to make the big money. Fighters don't make an awful lot of money. So that was a really good thing that Gazzo done for Rocky, even though he is a very shady character. But that was how that I was saying earlier, John, about this movie, and that's what I love about this movie as well. As we were messaging, and you had said to me, you want to talk about Paulie, and I know I've seen online a lot of people are like, why do they keep this guy about? He's a bomb, he's abusive, he's this, he's that, and he's other. But the thing I've got to remember as well is that every single character in this movie is flawed. Every single character has their faults, you know what I mean? But they also have their good side too. I mean, I don't think that Rocky, and we see it, is a completely, innocent character. You know, he's breaking people's thumbs, he's probably breaking legs, probably beating people up for Gazo just to earn money. And we see Rocky. I mean, talk about favourite scenes of movies. I was watching this film and I was sitting thinking, well, what about my favourite scene in this movie? And then I watch a scene and I go, that's my favourite scene. Then another scene was on and I go, that's my favourite scene. Then another scene was on and I go, no, that's my favourite scene. I'm like, no, I have several favourite scenes in this movie. And one of my first favourite scenes in this movie is when Rocky goes into the gym and he's got his locker taken away. And he goes in and confronts Mick.
I love that scene.
And that's when we hear... No, it's later on in it. Sorry, he confronts Mick about the locker. But it's later on in it when he comes in to get the card to go and meet Apollo Creed's promoter. Mickey says to him, there's a guy in here from Creed, wants you to give him a call. Says he probably wants sparring partners. And Rocky says, oh, from Creed's place? He's probably looking sparring partners. And he says, that's what I said, you dumbass or something like that. And he says, I've been coming in here 6 years and you've been sticking it to me. I want to know why. And that's when he says, because you've been...
Because you had the talent to become a good fighter.
And instead become a leg breaker. I love all that back and forth with him and Mickey. And then obviously later on, that culminates in another great scene that I love when Mickey comes to his apartment to offer his services to be his manager. And Rocky's like, don't need a manager. Don't need anything from you. Where were you when I did need you? Yeah, but it's not that. It's the fact that when he's leaving, Rocky just unloads on him. All this first when he leaves the apartment, he doesn't do it when he's there. He can't do it in front of him for some reason. He just can't do it. Maybe because he's an old man, but...
What about my pride, Mick? At least you had a pride.
It's when he leaves, all this frustration and anger comes out of Rocky, which has been pent up over the years. He's punching the door. But we see the heart in Rocky. Rocky comes down the steps and runs after Mickey. You see Mickey kind of like back off as if Rocky's going to hit him. And obviously,
no,
we just see it. We don't have to hear what Rocky says. I mean, obviously, he said, Mick, I'm sorry, no problem. I'll be in the gym tomorrow. Something maybe along those lines. That's what he said to Mick. And he runs back. And then we get our first training montage. And we know in these movies, we always get 2 training montages. And in the later movies, they're always like really good training montages. But what I love about this movie is the first training montage we see, it's not good. I love that scene when he leaves his apartment and we hear the music and it's still dark. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever it may be. It's a Rocky theme, but it's kind of really slowed down and it's a wee bit more kind of empathetic. And as dawn breaks and you see him kind of run up them steps, he's huffing, he just about makes it up the steps. And when he turns, you just see like the city. It's early morning. And when he passes, like I think it's the news truck, isn't it? And it's like people are only getting up and starting to go to work, where he's been up training for the last few hours, showing you that he's taking this serious. And the way the music kind of
escalates.
Off, it kind of just drifts off. John, as the morning, the day breaks, as if there's no real hope there. You know what I mean? He's trying, but there's no real hope there.
Yeah,
I just love that.
Oh yeah, that's one of the best scenes in the movie. Obviously, both montages are great, but what I love, I love it when they turn on the city too, because you get the lights. Honestly, like you can see the lights in the city, which I love that shot.
And the smoke.
Yeah, like it really gets that early morning feel. I love it when a movie can capture that. Like people love sunsets, but I love the early morning rise of because like you said, it's quiet. Like all you hear are anything in real life. All you hear are like birds and like that's really it. Like it's just so quiet, calm, and peaceful. And then as everyone starts to rise up and everything like that, and that's when he's going up the stairs. And I have to bring it up, but this movie gets a lot of credit for being the first film to use a Steadicam, because that's how they were able to follow. Right. But they did use it before this in Marathon Man. But it's really to perfection here how they were able to follow him up the stairs like that, and it doesn't have that handheld look to it.
Exactly, and I can't remember if it's used as good. Did they use it in the first training montage? I know that obviously the main training montage, which, you know, every time you hear it, it just gives me goosebumps when I watch it in this movie, and you know, you feel like you can go out and run a marathon afterwards, and you
Oh
can't,
yeah.
you probably just run down the street and then you I'm gonna go back here again. But did they use it for the first training montage? Because the camera, it does seem a wee bit jargon. It would make sense if they didn't use it for the first one.
I don't think they did. I mean, they did mostly, but like, I don't think they used the Steadicam throughout the entire movie. I just know that they used it specifically to go up the stairs to keep it looking straight on instead of like bouncing around. But yeah, when they're in the streets, I think they might be on a steady. They might be on like walking backwards with it, and it's in somebody's hand to stay like to give it that like grittier look to it. Because like you said, the first montage is like, you know, it's kind of like the beginning of it, the training. He's not fully 100%. In the second montage,
exactly,
he's ready to go. He's dialed in, and that's why the score is heavier.
Up them steps.
Oh yeah, he's not out of breath when he gets to the top. He can do it again if he wanted to. So they built it up perfectly. That's why you have the two montages, to see where we started and then to see where he's ready to go.
And that second montage, like when they do the wide shot of Stallone running and the boat and all in the background, you can see parts of Philadelphia and stuff like that. I love that. And when I was watching some of the making of, like the director was in a van, and the guy with the camera, or maybe it had been the cameraman, it might have been actually the Steadicam operator, I can't remember. But this is the guy that was driving the van, actually was the person, because I think that's this one, you couldn't believe it. So he is actually going really fast.
Yeah, I mean, he's an athlete.
Yeah.
Freaking Rocky. Yeah, no, I love that. And I mean, I know you're a big score guy, and what do you think of this score?
Love this score. I mean, who couldn't?
No,
I
know.
The main score is one of the most famous scores of all time, but what I love about it's not just the main score, it's outside of the main theme. As I said there, the first montage music is one of my favourites, but I think that the tune which is called Going the Distance, which is actually the tune they play at the end of the movie when he's fighting Creed, that is outstanding as well. I like it more in the second movie when it's Rocky's first training montage. I think it works well in the second movie, but obviously it was written for that. And then there's like a more slower version played, a more solemn version played over the ending credits as well, which is brilliant.
Yeah, they do a great job with the score of this movie. Obviously, it's most famous for its theme. I just want to hear what you thought of the rest of the score of this movie, because I do think it's a very well done score, and I was doing a little bit of research on it. I think they had to make the score for this one pretty fast as well, so it's like everything. So it's really incredible how they're able to capture that, and then building up to the big fight scene at the end, you know, to capture that. It's not the best of all the Rocky movies when it comes to the fight, obviously, because they get better as they go along when they get more money. I still think it is a great emotional fight.
Yeah, first of all, the score is actually like what you're saying there, but it's good how it kind of builds up to the main Gonna Fly Now thing. You know, it's very uplifting.
Yeah.
You know, we just hear the piano, we hear wee bits and pieces here and there, and then as I said, you hear a kind of, I'm not sure about the variation on it, but that first training montage, you kind of hear it. It's very slow, and you hear the horns and the piano, and it's, you know, it's a wee bit more kind of plodding along, you know, like that, a wee bit more depressing, and it builds up to that. And, but yes, watching this fight in this movie, you know, for me it was always kind of in the series one of my least favourites, but no, it served its purpose, and I think a lot of it's down to budget. Like the score, like I was actually heard an interview with Bill Conte who done the score, and he says that he asked could he see like dailies from the movie, could see part of the movie so he could write the score, and they said they couldn't afford a projector to show him it, so he had to write it just through the script. You know what I mean?
That's crazy.
Unbelievable. And that's what he said when he made the second movie. He had a lot more money, so he was able to use a lot more kind of orchestration. You know, he was able to get more trumpets in there and stuff, more violinists and things like that. But I think it's the same with the fight in this. And I thought it was actually very funny that Stallone was saying about the fight at the end. They actually choreographed the fight. You know, they choreographed every punch. You know, everything that was thrown, they choreographed everything, and they done it like a dance. So they knew, you know, if Creed throws a 1-2, Rocky would try and duck and then throw a left, you know, and then Creed would move out of the way and things like that. But Stallone had actually said they had hired, like, apparently one of the best fight choreographers in Hollywood, or the best, and he'd done all these boxing movies. And apparently Stallone said, I would like Creed to come out in the first round and throw 4 punches in the face, and the fight choreographer says you can't do that, and Stallone disagreed with him. So he walked off the show, and Stallone thought he was in big trouble because this was like the elite guy you get in Hollywood. He says it actually was a godsend. He says because the director then said to Stallone, well, you're the writer. Why don't you go home and write the fight out? If you can write dialogue, write it out. Like, Apollo throws a left and a right, Rocky throws a right, blah, blah, blah. So Stallone done that. And I think they've done that through all the movies after that. Every single fight is choreographed. And they're certainly they actually film the fight first now in the sequence to get that out of the way. Just the dummies themselves or something,
Yeah, they got hurt, both of them, in this fight, actually. And I think they got the opposites. They got the opposite injuries of what their characters got. I think Apollo really got hurt in the eye, while Rocky really got hurt in the ribs. And, they both had to go to the hospital. So, I mean, when you're doing fake fighting, unfortunately, you gotta get as close as you can, and sometimes you go a little too far. And I guess they both understood that's how it works when you're in the ring. Like you said, it's a dance. They choreographed it. Actually, one of the extras on the 4K, you probably have already seen it, is 8mm footage of them in the ring, actually shot by no sound or nothing, but it actually just shows how they had that chemistry, and they were just trying to perfect that to make it look as real as possible by the time they got to it. And then obviously the sequels, budgets are a big deal. That's what really holds back. I think this is one of the weaker ones as well, but I understand, and as long as it builds to that conclusion perfectly, which it does, then it's fine.
Yeah, and watching it again the other night, to me, the fight in the first one, I think the sixth one people will say is the most realistic fight. I don't know what I don't like about the sixth fight. And listen, it's a movie, dramatic license. The fight in the sixth movie, they have a lot of close-ups of Rocky kind of in his corner, and then it cuts to black and white, and then it does cutbacks to Mickey and I think Adrian's grave and things like that. It takes you kind of out of the fight.
Yeah.
But at least this fight, when I'm sitting watching this, it's almost like the camera's very early in the ring with them, and it's kind of outside the ropes. So you're kind of like a spectator in the ring watching the fight. To me, that fight was very kind of realistic. I thought the fight in the first one was very realistic compared to the sequels.
Oh yeah, they become more cinematic.
None of these really over the top special effects. So as much as I love the fight in the second one, love the fight in the third one, and the fourth one, but they put in these over the top special effects. Of when the punch lands, it sounds like a bomb's going off.
Yeah, I know. That's one thing. I mean, I haven't seen Creed 3 yet, but I've heard that they cut into animation, because Michael B. Jordan was he's a big fan of anime, so he kind of edited the fight like that for Creed 3, which I always kind of when you watch all the Rocky movies in order, it is pretty cool to see that they don't ever really repeat themselves when it comes to fights, and they always try to do something different, which I really do appreciate because boxing movies, it can get boring if you don't see something different. Yeah. And even with all the Rocky movies, I still think that some of the best filmmaking when it comes to boxing was done in Raging Bull, just because of what they were trying to illustrate with the drama of taking the camera further and further out of the ring as his head, gets further and further outside of the ring. I like that cinematic nature to that, but I do like that they didn't repeat themselves. But you're right, with Rocky 1, it is definitely more realistic, and I like how they're outside the ring a lot more in that.
Yeah, it's more realistic. I think, I understand what you're saying about the artistic side of things. I have seen Creed 3, and there is a bit in the movie where it's basically when Creed's fighting the opponent, the darkens down, and there's no crowd, and it's black in the background. I can't remember what else happens, but it's just him and the guys fighting.
Okay.
So it feels a wee bit more intimate, a wee bit more personal. I heard people complain about it, but it didn't bother me. It is what it is. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the Creed movies anyway, but I did enjoy Creed 3. I enjoyed Creed and Creed 2 and Creed 3. Just don't think they're in the same league as the Rocky movies, to be honest, but that's a different story.
I think that the problem with the Creed series is that they're very reliant on the Rocky series. Like when you were talking about Rocky 3 and the storyline of Rocky 3, you can argue or was it Rocky 3? You can argue that the storyline, which one was it? It's Rocky 3 with Mr. T, where how he was coming out of prison. That's very similar to Jonathan Major's character in Creed 3, isn't it? So they kind of repeat their storylines a little bit. And you could argue Creed 1 is a retelling of Rocky.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem I have with the Creed movies, John, to be honest with you. Creed 3, a lot of people say as well, it's a lot like Rocky 5 as well, because this is a childhood friend. They're friends at the start, and then, I don't want to ruin it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but because it is relatively new, but they're friends at the start and they become adversaries. And a lot of people said, "Oh, Rocky 5 was that." The biggest problem with Rocky 5 was, we didn't fight Tommy Gunn in the ring.
No.
You know what I mean? And then they fight in the ring in Creed 3. But yes, I agree with you. I just feel as if Creed was just a retread of Rocky. But I just didn't think, the problem I have with it was the characters. I just don't think Michael B. Jordan's Creed as compelling as Rocky Balboa. And that's fair enough, because you couldn't have somebody playing Rocky again, because that would be too obvious. But it's not only that. What makes Rocky for me, even the sequels, is the side characters. It's Adrian, it's Paulie, and the opponents. I just find that Apollo Creed is more interesting than Tony Bellew, who's a real fighter over here, this side of the world. And I've been watching his fights for years. And then he was in Creed, and I just couldn't get my head around that. And as I say, Mr. T grew up watching, but brilliant villain, and even Ivan Drago, who's different than Mr. T's or Clubber 9, great villain. What a great movie villain. And Victor Drago was good as well. Thing is a bit strange. Creed 2 for me, I enjoyed Creed 2 more than Creed 1, but Creed 1 is a better movie.
I agree. I actually agree with you on both those things. I enjoy Creed 2 more than Creed 1. I like bringing Drago back. I always found Dolph Lundgren, I always think he's a very interesting actor, because the guy's apparently a genius. And the character he's most known for barely speaks and is just essentially a robot. But I'm like, oh, this guy's... Yeah. And I was glad that they fleshed out that character. That's a character I wanted to see get fleshed out. And I was glad, okay, it's a legacy sequel. These can be hit or miss. And I was like, okay, they fleshed him out and showed, why he was the way he was, how he's a product of his nation. And, he's trying to do the best that he can do. And I really loved that they fleshed that out. And especially showing the relationship now with his kid, and how he's basically pushing onto him what was pushed onto himself. I love that aspect of that movie.
Well, the movie was about fathers and sons, wasn't it? Stallone said that. And Stallone wrote the second one. And you're right. The most interesting part of Creed 2 was the Dragos. And that's the reason why I couldn't wait to see it, because I love the Rocky series. And as much as I don't rank Rocky 4 as high as some of the others, I still love Rocky 4. Still don't get criticised for that, because it was kind of like, oh, this is about Creed. You kind of hijacked it a bit, but it's his characters at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. But I just don't, as I say, I just don't rate the Creed movies as highly as I do the Rocky movies, even the cheesy ones. And it's because of the characterizations. And I know that you've been busting to talk about this. We're going to talk about Paulie.
Yeah. Paulie, his character, he's one of a kind. I never could understand, he's kind of a little bit abusive to his sister. And, we were talking, just through Messenger about how he... he's Rocky's best friend. He's kind of looking out for Rocky. He's doing go date my sister, which is weird. He's kind of pushing his sister onto his buddy, which is, very strange, kind of whoring her out a little bit. I don't know how I feel about that, but I think it's hard. Like you said, everyone operates kind of in the gray area. They all have flaws. At the end of the day, he cares about his sister, and he's like, Rocky's one of the best guys I know. But then when Rocky starts to get a little successful, Paulie right away gets jealous. It just starts being kind of a dick to Rocky, and then Rocky's the one who feels bad and throws him a bone. It's I'll promote the store for you. Don't worry about it. We'll make it work. You come out with me too because we're friends. And he rides Rocky's coattails through the entire series.
Yeah. And I know I've seen when we were watching things on YouTube, people with their own channels about movies and things. Why does Rocky put up those guys? You get rid of them and all the rest. But my attitude is that I've said earlier on about these are all flawed characters, right? Mm-hmm. They've all got problems. They've all got conflict with each other. They're always sniping at each other, fighting at each other, but they need each other. Do you know what I mean?
They do.
I just find that Rocky and Paulie are friends that go way back. Paulie probably doesn't have any other friends.
Probably not.
Rocky doesn't have any other friends. So they kind of need each other. Paulie in Rocky 1 is the most fleshed out and rounded he's ever been. After the first movie, as I said earlier, the earlier drafts were darker, and I think as the series went on, he became more of a punchline. Paulie became a punchline, and that's okay. I mean, I can live with that. He's never a bigger punchline than he is in Rocky 4.
Oh, he's a joke in Rocky 4, and that's why when you see
exactly
when you get the new cut of the movie, he's pretty much not in it because they cut out his whole storyline essentially.
And I didn't like that either, that they thought that they took out some of the funny stuff he said as well, but because I was used to it by then, it's not like I'm sitting going, oh, I don't like the fact he's a punch in Rocky 3 or 4, why she wasn't in it, you know what I mean? It's just the way the series evolved, because all the characters evolved. I mean, even like Talia Shire, she was a lot stronger in Rocky 3 and 4 and 5 than she was in Rocky 2 and 1. Do you know what I mean? They all changed, they all evolved. But I think that Paulie in this is the strongest that Paulie's ever been, till maybe Rocky Balboa. I think you just saying there about pimping his sister out, like, obviously Rocky really likes Adrian and really wants to get with her. But it just crossed my mind throughout the movie, Paulie kept saying to Rocky, did you tell Gazzo about me? Did you tell Gazzo about me? I'd go work for Gazzo. Do you think Paulie was thinking, here, go with my sister, but here, do this thing with Gazzo for me? Because you notice his attitude changed.
Oh, yeah. Like, he's very persistent. You're right. He's always bothering him about that. And Paulie, he's selfish at the end of the day. So, of course, he would use his sister. He would use Rocky to help himself. But I always felt like he's lost. Like, I don't know, like, what his background is. I don't know, like, what his childhood is. Like, he's definitely, like, the stronger of the two of them between him and his sister. So he's out there, making money for them, and I get that that's what it is. Like, maybe something in their childhood happened, and that's why Adrian's the way that she is, and Paulie's the way that he is, because they're just opposite sides of the spectrum. So I don't know, like, clearly there's some pain in his past to make somebody act that way all the time, and I think Rocky understands that, and like you said, they probably old friends that go way, way back, don't have anyone else, so Rocky can see past all his flaws. And he tries to smooth it always over with other people. Like, yeah, that's kind of how he is. Unfortunately, he's a flawed person, but deep down, he means well.
Yeah, and exactly. And that's my initial thoughts, to be honest with you, John, is that it's quite obvious that Paulie's jealous of Rocky, the attention that Rocky's getting. Mm-hmm. And the fact he's been given this shot. And he's always trying to worm his way in. When he hears on the TV, which is one of my favourite scenes as well, when Rocky's on the TV, and he says about, I want to say, hi to my girlfriend, and he goes, hey, yo, Adrian, it's me, Rocky, I'm on TV. And then you hear him saying, like, stop pushing me, man, I'll punch you in the mouth. And he better push him off the stage. He's like, stop pushing me, man, I'll punch you in the mouth. But he hears that Rocky's getting, what is it, 100,000 for the fight or something?
Yeah.
And then you see, like, Paulie looking, and then Paulie starts saying to him, well, maybe you need somebody to help you out, Rock. You know what I mean? So he's I think, like you say, deep down he means well. So then he becomes jealous. You won't get me in with Gazzo. You won't want me in your corner. And you're right. I think that Paulie is kind of lost in his own life. They're all lost in their own life. Mickey's lost. Mickey's this old, broken down trainer running around stinky gym, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
With no prospects whatsoever. And then you've got Rocky. Where's his life going? That's going nowhere. Adrian's life's going nowhere. And Paulie's the same. And you were saying about something about in their backgrounds. I always took it that they were orphans. I always took it that Paulie was maybe a good bit older than Adrian. Well, I'll say good bit. He could be maybe 5 or 6 years older than Adrian. So he kind of looked like we're talking about Mari Crane and Sego. He was looking after Adrian as well. But then Adrian she's that kind of shy and introverted that she didn't know how to break out of her kids, so to speak. And you heard her saying later on when she rises up in the film and actually confronts Paulie and says, I owe you nothing. I do your cooking. I pick up your dirty washing. I do the cleaning. You've made me feel like a loser. You know what I mean? And she got that strength through her relationship with Rocky, seeing what he was doing. You know what I mean? Stepping up when he was asked to fight the heavyweight champion of the world. And I just think that he was a bit broken down. You see a photograph of Paulie in, like, is it a Navy uniform on the sideboard?
Something like that. One of those military uniforms.
Yeah, so he could have had a military background as well. So I think you're right, John, as well. I think, yes, they're all flawed characters, and I think that he just feels as if he's one of these guys that, as well, he feels probably thinking, where's my life going as well? You see him when he's still having Rocky. I think he's giving him the meat. And then he gets the television crew in when Rocky doesn't want him to as well, because he feels as if he must be part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then later on, when he smooths it over with Rocky, another great small scene I like, after the fight he has with Rocky in his house, and he threatens to break his arms. Later on, he comes in and he says, hey, Rocky, if I can make some money off your name, would you mind? And it shows you the character of Rocky. Rocky says, sure, if you can make money off my name, you do it, Paulie. But I laugh later on when Mickey says, "What's that saying on your back?" And he says, "Oh, it's advertising Paulie's meat company." And he says, "What do you get out of it?" He says, "Paulie gets $3,000. I get to keep the road." And you hear Mickey said, "Shrewd." But when Rocky's getting into the ring, you hear the commentators actually saying, "What's that on his back there?" It says, "It's some meat company, Shamrock Meats." But at the laugh as well, when Rocky's coming to the ring, Paulie steps out with this woman and says, "Here, Rock, how do you like the woman? She cost me $200." And she says, $250.
Yeah, I love that. They are, and granted, it's great. It does show the flaws, and then just does show the good-hearted nature of Rocky. Like, you know what? He can make the money off my name. I don't really care. That's not really what I'm in it for. A lot of it, he's in it for respect. Like, to show that he can do something other than what he's been doing. Show that, get the respect of the rest of the, you know, the people around him. Show that the people that he's around aren't poor bums who just live in Philadelphia floating through life. Like, it means more than just money. And if Paulie wants to make money and that's what he cares about, it's not hurting anyone, I guess, for him to use my name.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, John, I think Rocky deep down understands the frustration that Paulie's feeling, because we've seen Rocky vent with that frustration throughout the movie. He vents at Gazzo, he vents at Mickey, and ultimately, I mean, I think some people misunderstand that scene as well with Mickey when Mickey comes to the apartment. I don't think Mickey's an opportunist. I actually think that Mickey genuinely doesn't want to help Rocky. And I think that is just a misunderstanding and a clash of personalities between them. Because as you said earlier on, John, is that Mickey knows and sees that Rocky had potential and he is not fulfilling it. And that is why when he says, "Why didn't you help me all those years ago?" I mean, Mickey probably would have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Isn't there a bit where Mickey goes, "You didn't ask" or something? And he says, "Well, where were you, Mick, when I asked for your help?" And he says, "Yeah, you didn't ask." And he says, "I did ask, but you didn't listen." So,
listen, kid.
Hey, look, hey, Mick.
What?
Look, I need your help about 10 years ago, right? 10 years ago.
Right.
You never helped me.
I think when Mickey comes to that apartment, Mickey genuinely cares about Rocky and really wants him to do well. Doesn't want him to get bothered about the ring. He knows that Rocky can't do it all by himself. And that's why he's offering his services and saying, "Look, I want to really help you with this." And when Apollo puts Rocky down, I think in the 14th round, he tells him to stay down because he thinks that Rocky's took enough of a beating. He doesn't want him to suffer anymore. You know, he's proved everybody wrong. You know, that he's won 14 rounds at that stage with the heavyweight champion of all time. He's not a bum.
Yeah, you did enough. You proved it to everyone, you proved it to me. And I think that, again, like when Mickey's character, he's lost as well. And, you know, you're right. He's not like Paulie. He's not trying to make a buck off of Rocky. I think it's sad for him to look at Rocky have that potential. And from his generation, he's an older guy. It's just tough love. Like, I'm not going to kiss your ass, but that's what you want. You want somebody to kiss your ass. No, I'm going to tell you that you need to do the work yourself.
Yeah.
I'll help you do the work, but you have to be willing to put it all on the line. Like, you have the potential to be great. And then that's why he's like at the very end of the movie, like, yeah, when he's telling him to stay down, it's like, you proved it. You did all the work. You don't need to do more.
Yeah.
But Rocky...
You don't need to get beat on anymore.
Yep, exactly. You don't need to take the beating. But Rocky feels like he's got to finish the fight. And for him, that's all he wanted to do. He made sure to point that out. And, you know, he's like, I don't think I can win. I just want to, you know, finish it. And he does. He succeeded in his goal in the end. He gets the girl and everyone gets to go home happy, even if he doesn't get to win the fight. And I think that he was supposed to, the original intention was, you know, he'd retire and that was it. He had his moment in the sun and before they decided to make sequels.
And I think that happens in the sequels. We'll go into Rocky 2 another time if you want to do Rocky 2 at some stage. But yeah, that happens in Rocky 2, doesn't it? That the fact he starts getting forgot about. People don't know who he is. Love that scene in Rocky 3 where he goes in for the job and somebody says to him, I heard you were a fighter. I heard you were really good. Why don't you fight? And it's and rather than saying, "Oh, you're Rocky Balboa. I watched your fight with Apollo Creed," they're like, "Oh, I heard you fought." So that starts to happen in Rocky 2. But there's almost this kind of feeling too, John, that Mickey, going back to Mickey again, that he was potentially a fighter that didn't fulfill his potential, and he sees that himself in Rocky. So maybe there could be that as well.
Yeah, like you're right. He gets to manage a gym, but he's an old man running a gym with a bunch of people, who aren't going to be successful, and probably like him, he had the chance possibly in his past, Mickey, to be a successful fighter, missed his opportunity, and he's like, I could see that that's the same path you're heading down. If you don't make a change, this is where you'll be. In 40, 50 years, you'll be just like me, miserable looking back on your life, on missed opportunities, and I see it, and I'm not going to stick around to watch it, and that's why he kicks him out of the gym.
Yeah, that's right. And I like Big Dipper Brown, and he says, "You rock. I dig your locker, man."
I know, that is great.
It's a brilliant. I love that scene where he goes in, he says, you what happened to my locker? But then he tries to justify it later on when he goes in to speak to Adrian, and he says to Adrian, I bet got my locker took off me today. That doesn't matter, lockers are bad. I had about $20 stored out over the last 6 years.
Put the positive twist on.
Fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
He opens it up. There's all these pictures with stippers put up.
Yeah, the guy really just made himself right at home.
Yeah.
I never did that. Hung things up in a locker.
I don't think I ever had a locker.
They gave us lockers in school.
Rocky. I was on Skid Row.
Yeah. They gave us lockers in school, and I literally never used it because they also only gave us 3 minutes in between periods. So I'm like, how am I going to a locker?
No, listen, we didn't even have lockers in our school.
No?
You just had your bag, and that was it. And you brought your bag with you. You brought your school bag. You packed your school bag up, and then you moved on to the next period. And then at lunchtime, you had to bring your bag into the classroom you were going into after lunch.
Well, I had the chance to use the locker, but I just did what you did. I would bring a bag. Honestly, once I got to high school, I got really lazy, and I would just carry one notebook with me.
Well, we had all these books. Like you would have, say, you would give you like a geography book. Do you know what I mean? Then you would have, like, for example, an English book, and then whatever it is you were doing.
Yeah.
Science, whatever. But then again, you had your timetable, your schedule for the week. So it was like, you mightn't do every class every day. You may have 3 periods a week, and it might be certain times. And sometimes one of your periods you would do maybe 2 classes a day. So you would have one in the morning, one in the afternoon as well. So it was worked out that way. So you didn't need the same books every single day, but you had a different genre for each class.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we pretty much had that, but I would I would just not bring the textbooks. Like, a lot of time they had some, they would have them in the class. So I worked out a system for me to carry as little as possible. And it worked for 4 years.
So I may as well have not have taken the textbooks. Didn't do me any good in the long run.
Yeah.
Rocky here. My potential has never been fulfilled.
Yeah, me too. I get that. I always look back at high school as missed opportunities. If I would have just took it a little bit seriously while I was there, maybe I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah, I needed Mickey in my life to tell me where I went wrong and just kind of like give me a kick up the backside.
Everyone needs that. Tough love. Tough love works more than babying, I think.
Yeah.
Anything else you got to say about Rocky before we wrap this one up?
No, I think I've covered everything on Rocky. I really love this movie. It's just, as I said in one of our last podcasts, John, just the older I get now, maybe I'm turning into a grumpy old man. Maybe I'm turning into Mickey myself, rather than Rocky, missed opportunities and all that. But I just feel as if a lot of modern cinema doesn't do it for me anymore. And the older I get, I go back and I revisit the old classics, and I love them even more and more. Even the movies I grew up with, and I've seen them a million times. I had Rocky on the other night, and I've watched Rocky a few times in the last few years, and it's kind of because I've seen the movie. You've got it on, and maybe you go on your phone, or maybe, you know what I mean? But when I sat watching the other night, because we're doing it for the pod, I try to stay off my phone, and I just sit and watch it, and I just really, really enjoy it. And it's the same when I go back and I watch Raiders and movies like that. I just really, really enjoy watching these old movies again. And that's why it's been in my top 10 for a long time now, and it's still there. Like, it's just one of my favorite films of all time.
It's really funny that you said that about, like, going back and watching the classics in comparison to modern film. Like, I review modern film on the channel too, and it's just so hard. I never get the same feeling as I do with, like, older 70s, 80s, even 90s movies. Like, I just rewatched The Fugitive this week, and I've watched that movie 100 times, but it's amazing. I watch it, I'm like, I just want a movie to come out that's as good as this and make me feel like this movie did. It's just, they don't come along like that anymore. Maybe you get 1 or 2 a year that you go, I'll be revisiting that, like, forever, but not like how they used to. And I don't want to be a cliche and say that they don't make them like they used to, but they really don't. They don't make movies like Rocky anymore.
They just don't feel honest to me. The actors don't feel real to me.
No.
situations they're in don't feel real. Special effects doesn't look real. I just feel as if we're down the road of living in a computer game. And when I watch a gritty movie like Rocky, 70s movies, I feel, even though I wasn't around in the 70s, and they are products of their time, very 70s looking and all, sounding 70s, even 80s,
Yeah.
but the people in it are real, and you can relate to them. And that's the difference, with a movie like Rocky. Everybody, that's why it's so popular, that's why it's done so well. Everybody can relate to Rocky. And if you can't relate to Rocky, you might relate to Paulie. If you don't relate to Paulie, you might relate to Mickey or Adrian. But I can relate to all those characters. Even Apollo Creed, to a certain extent, I can relate to Apollo because he's not perfect either. He has his flaws. And that's what makes it so great.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, Apollo Creed, like, we talked about him, but yeah, like, the cockiness and arrogance, everybody
Yes.
can fall to that point. Like, when you get to a certain point, they start to illustrate it in the later Rocky movies. Like, when you get too comfortable, you forget, like, where you came from, like, what got you to that point. And if you don't draw yourself back, and I love that about Apollo, he does bring himself back. He never, ever becomes a villain. He is the rivalry to Rocky, but he's never a villain in this series. He's a regular guy who got successful and had to realize that, he got successful for a certain reason, and he's got to come falling back down to earth and realize where he came from, and that's why I love the Apollo character.
Well, he becomes more of a villain in the second movie.
Mm-hmm.
But never oversteps the mark, really, because they tell him, as a Vegas tell him, if you do this, you're setting yourself up as the bad guy. And he's like, I don't care, whatever gets him in the ring. So you still see a human side of him in Rocky 2, especially when he's with his kids and his wife, and he's getting all these hate letters, you know what I mean? And it's really on his mind. And the funny thing is, John, as well, is, art imitates life, life imitates art. As I've said, like, Stallone has borrowed from the history of boxing and all the rest. We have seen this story of Rocky play out for Rocky and after Rocky, time and time again. There's fighters out there who don't learn. Very topical at the minute. Same thing happened to Tyson Fury only last month when he fought Ngannou. And somebody had said it, I was listening to a boxing podcast, I thought it myself anyway, but somebody said it says, go match Rocky, that was Ngannou and Tyson Fury. Ngannou was given a shot, nobody gave him a chance. Thought that Tyson Fury was going to destroy him. Ngannou floored him and went the distance, and people said Ngannou won the fight.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happens in Rocky.
And that's a movie.
I've seen it as well. Sorry, mate, go ahead.
And I was like, then that's a movie, so that just shows you.
That just shows you, you know what I mean? And to be honest, we've seen it like Buster Douglas when he knocked out Mike Tyson.
Oh, that was
give
huge.
Buster Douglas a chance.
No.
But the thing was as well is that, Tyson took his eye off the ball. Tyson became complacent. Tyson didn't really train. Tyson thought to himself, I've knocked out guys that have knocked him out. I don't need to try as hard as I normally do. And the same thing probably with Tyson Fury when he fought Ngannou. He thought, this guy's never fought boxing fight before. I'll never be a champion. I don't have to maybe work as hard or, as I normally do. Mm-hmm. And that's Apollo Creed in the first Rocky. And that then happens to Rocky in Rocky 3.
Yep.
But we're going to talk about Rocky 3 maybe at some other time. But as I say, so
it's just very, I was just going to say, yeah, I agree. I just 100% agree for you. It's just very rare, and it's always happens in history, but it doesn't matter if it's a director, an actor. Eventually, they just get, it's human nature. You just get complacent. You never really remember. You're humble for a while, but as time goes on, everything becomes routine, and you kind of just lose your way, and you always need, you need Buster Douglas to come along and knock you on your ass to go, hey, that's what it is. You lost your eye. You didn't keep your eye on the ball long enough. I'm here. I'm on the up. You've already been here for a long enough time. I'm gonna knock you down. It's my time now, and it happens all the time in any sport.
And it happens in Rocky 3, which is about the tiger. It's about having the hunger, and like in real life, it's like, I can't remember which fighter it was. Was it Marvin Hagler or some fighter? I can't remember. Says it's hard to get up and go out on 5 in the morning when you're sleeping in silk seats, and that's the whole thing. You see the squalor that Rocky is living in, and that's what I mean about that scene when he gets up and does his first training montage. 4 in the morning, it's freezing cold. He's holding his clothes. He cracks them eggs and downs them eggs. I don't think people do that anymore.
I hope not.
But when he goes out in the freezing cold and starts running, you know, we see it in Rocky 3, seen it in history. When people have a lot of money, it's less reason, and they're lying in a heated room, bedroom, whatever. It's harder to roll out of bed at 4 a.m. and do a bloody 6-mile run. You know, not that I've ever done that, but I can imagine. You know? And then these guys are hungry. There's no money. They're fighting for bread. You know what I mean? They're fighting to put food on their plates. And when you've got all the money in the world and you don't have to work as hard, that's when you become a wee bit more complacent.
Yep, it's just
And
that.
I think that's what happened to Apollo as well. You know, he had nothing. Apollo had nothing left to prove. If this fictional character with 40 wins, 40 knockouts, nobody wants to fight him. You know, he thinks he's better than all of them anyway. He's got nothing left to prove. He probably he just became complacent. He could have retired there and that's it, but he didn't. It was all about him. He wanted to keep himself in the spotlight, and then he turned the bicentenary into a bit of a circus and all about himself. And he came back to bite him.
Yep, that's it. It's like he could have easily just played a character where he was just an angry villain, like you know, I don't care. But like he does have still a heart to him, and that's why the Tony character is great. He's the one trying to draw him back to pay attention. You know, it'd be like because he came up with him. He's a friend of his. He's like, I don't want to see you go, but I know where you're heading. But, you know, he's got to learn that lesson for himself, no matter how many times he warns him. And that's why I love it in the first round. He shakes that knockdown off and like, all right, let me refocus.
Exactly. The long count.
Yep. And the long count. He was down for 10.
Doesn't save you once again. Count it. He's down for longer than 10 seconds.
Yeah. Well, maybe he'll go in.
Last round too. See that last round?
Yeah. It was probably long.
3 minutes.
No. I believe it. But, you know, we got to get to where we got to get. Adrian's hat's got to fly off. You know,
yeah, it wasn't about that. It wasn't about Rocky beating Apollo. It was about him earning self-respect.
Yep, but he'll win. He'll get his day.
The love of his life.
Yeah, he does get Adrian in the end. Which, you know what? That's the biggest win of them all.
I wonder did she get her hat back?
I know. I'm sure someone picked it up and brought it to her. I love that though. Hey, Adrian, where'd your hat go?
Yeah, where's your hat?
Where's your hat? Anyway, guys, thank you for being here with another episode of the Let's Talk podcast with me and David. We'll be around for another one in the near future. And if you guys want to continue to support the channel, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, maybe join channel memberships. Just get out in those streets of Philadelphia and tell your friends about us. We'll be seeing you around.